We've all grown used to the fact that we don't get answers in this House, so perhaps you could give us advice about whether ministers are ever actually going to answer a question. But then he decides to abuse me and insult me personally.
Right. I'll gather around my dear fellow Brits because you're about to witness a parliamentary grilling so awkward, so toe-curlingly magnificent, it makes an episode of Come Dine With Me look like a UN peace summit. Strap in, have your biscuits and brew at the ready, because we're about to dive into what can only be described as the House of Commons version of EastEnders meets Yes, Minister, with a hint of Jeremy Kyle. Before we show you the video footage, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I want to remind the Foreign Secretary that the government that invited Huawei into our telecommunications network was actually the last Labour government between 2003 and 2006.
Long memories.
He's tried to be partisan about it. The ebb and flow of these issues and the mistakes go back quite a long time, and he should acknowledge that. And will he rule out any Chinese involvement in our energy infrastructure?
I'm really going to take no lectures from the Honourable Gentleman, whose advice to former Prime Minister May led to the possibility of nuclear information being revealed. He should be embarrassed, and I'm surprised he came to this debate this afternoon.
You need to withdraw.
Neil Shackleton.
Thank you very much.
Point of order, Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We've all grown used to the fact that we don't get answers in this House, so perhaps you could give us advice about whether ministers are ever actually going to answer a question. But then he decides to abuse me and insult me personally about advice he claims I gave to the Prime Minister in a former role I had. He has no idea what advice I gave in that job. And if he cares so much about my personal history, he would actually read all the things I've ever written about the role of Chinese companies in our energy infrastructure. So I'd like him to take the opportunity to withdraw that accusation.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it is a matter of record that former Prime Minister May was considering matters that pertain to our nuclear capability. The Honourable Member was an advisor at that stage, and she had to withdraw her recommendations on the China General Nuclear Company. That is a matter of record, and anyone in this chamber can Google it.
Now picture this. The House of Commons is bustling. Ties are tight. Tempers are tighter, and the Honourable David Lambie, our star for today, walks into the chamber with all the swagger of a man who's just memorized every page of Wikipedia, but forgot to charge his common sense. Across from him, like a knight of parliamentary sass, is none other than Nick Timothy, calmly sharpening his wit like it's a ceremonial dagger passed down from generations of savage debaters. And then it begins. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Nick starts calm as a monk, sipping Earl Grey, but we know what's coming. You know when someone says, no offense, but, and then proceeds to offend your entire ancestry? Yes, that kind of energy. He starts by pointing out that the whole Huawei hullabaloo wasn't just a recent blunder. It was actually invited in by Labour's very own government. Yes, that Labour government circa 2003 to 2006, long before TikTok, but after dial-up internet. History is a funny old thing, isn't it? David Lamb's face at this point is doing Olympic-level gymnastics. He's not amused, he leans forward. One can almost hear the mental typewriter clacking furiously in his head, loading up a stern rebuke. But instead of answering the actual question, our dear Mr. Lambie decides it's time for the personal insult detour. You see, rather than directly engaging with the pressing national security concerns, like, oh, I don't know, the Chinese possibly poking around in our energy grid, David goes full pantomime villain. Oh no, I won't take lectures from that honorable gentleman. He booms, which is a classic move like covering your ears in a debate and shouting, La, I can't hear you. Very effective in primary school. Slightly less so when you're the foreign secretary. He then bizarrely implies that Nick Timothy should be embarrassed for turning up. Yes, imagine that. How dare you turn up to this debate armed with facts, history, and a functioning memory? I mean, how very dare he? You can almost see a Victorian fainting couch materializing behind Lammy as he clutches his pearls at the sheer audacity. Nick, bless his cotton socks, maintains composure. He smiled. That knowing smile, the kind you give someone who's just confidently declared the moon is made of cheese. We don't get answers in this house, he says, probably resisting the urge to mime the world's tiniest violin. Then, with the precision of a surgeon wielding a scalpel, he points out that Lammy has no actual idea what advice he gave to Theresa May during his role as advisor. And now, ladies and gents, we witness what can only be described as a live, unscheduled meltdown. David Lammy insists that it's a matter of public record. He's standing there waving around the word record like it's a Harry Potter spell that'll make dissent disappear. He claims that Theresa May had to withdraw recommendations based on Chinese involvement, which somehow in the labyrinth of Lammy logic is all Nick Timothy's fault. It's brilliant, like watching someone try to deflect blame for a burnt soul by blaming the oven's great-grandfather. The logic is simultaneously acrobatic and utterly nonsensical. But oh, it gets better. Lammy, now sounding a bit like a schoolboy caught fibbing about doing his homework, attempts to throw the big Google it card onto the parliamentary table. Yes, Google it, he cries, because that's what we're doing now, governing by Google. Soon MPs will be citing Wikipedia footnotes and TikTok experts. Look here, Madam Speaker. This TikTok clearly shows a bloke in a tracksuit explaining energy policy using emojis. Meanwhile, Nick just sits there, the human embodiment of unbothered, and you can practically hear him thinking, mate, I was there, I don't need to Google it. The whole house is watching this back and forth like it's the final round of the Great British Bake Off. Except instead of cakes, it's credibility that's collapsing under pressure. Should the UK, a sovereign nation, allow any form of foreign influence over our energy infrastructure, especially from a country with a, shall we say, complicated relationship with transparency and espionage? It's a valid concern, one worthy of a thoughtful, measured response. But instead, we get Lammy, eyes bulging, voice rising, launching into what sounds like a dramatic reading of his own autobiography, sprinkled with defensive monologues. He's clearly rattled. You know when someone's been called out and starts grasping at straws. At one point, you half expect him to declare that he once watched an episode of Westminster and therefore understands foreign policy deeply. And through it all, the chamber watches. The speaker attempts to keep order. You can almost hear the collective internal sighs because let's face it, nothing's being answered, just danced around, deflected, and denied with a confidence only rivaled by someone who swears they can DJ, but only owns 8. Now that's what I call music. By now, the viewer at home, cup of tea long gone cold, is thinking, did Lammy just roast himself? Yes, he did. You see, in trying to insult Nick Timothy, he ended up spotlighting his own lack of response, his diversionary tactics, and his astonishing ability to turn a serious debate into a playground squabble. But that, dear viewer, is the genius of British parliamentary drama. It's not just about the policy, it's about the performance. And Lammy, oh, he performed all right, somewhere between Shakespearean tragedy and a pantomime villain yelling, "It wasn't me." And through it all, Nick sits back, lets the storm blow itself out, and quietly reinforces his original point. This government, this foreign secretary cannot give a straight answer to a straight question, and when challenged, they lash out. Not with facts, not with policy, but with thinly veiled insults and evasive rhetoric. As the chamber calms, Lammy finally simmers down, presumably waiting for a round of applause that never comes. There's an awkward silence, the kind that makes you question life choices, the kind that screams, I definitely lost that argument, but I'll pretend I did. So what have we learned today, folks? And firstly, Google it is not an acceptable parliamentary citation. Secondly, if you're going to accuse someone of something, make sure they weren't literally in the room when it happened. Thirdly, never mistake shouting for substance. And lastly, and most importantly, when you're under pressure, don't go full Lammy. Never go full Lammy. This has been your unofficial, highly caffeinated, deeply cheeky parliamentary breakdown. If you enjoyed watching David Lamby tie himself into rhetorical knots while Nick Timothy stood there like a GCSE examiner waiting for someone to finish a doomed essay, do subscribe. Give us a like, and next time you hear someone shout, Madam Deputy Speaker, you'll know the drama's about to begin. Tata for now.